In today's session, we're going to continue on the process of implementation on how to achieve breakthrough improvement for your organization. And when we talk about breakthrough improvement, it's getting significant improvement in a short period of time. So we've talked about the first four steps in the previous videos. This is the fifth step in determining reliable lead times. So reliable lead times are important for two purposes. One, when we receive an order from the customer, what are we going to give them as a promise date? And what we want is 99% on-time delivery performance. And number two, when should we release that order into the system to reliably flow that order from start to finish? And so after 40 years of experience, I have some calculations that I do to determine reliable lead times as a good starting point. So first of all, we want to look at the value streams within the organization, and we want to understand the different flows in the organization and what products flow through those different value streams. Once we do that, we can determine what is the touch time? How much time does it actually take to transform that product or service through the value stream to complete it from start to finish? And so our first thing is we got to validate what is our current touch time to lead time ratio. So if we understand the touch time, that's the time to convert the product. But how long does it take you to get that order through your system? So we do that calculation and we look at the ratio. And if your ratio is less than 5%, meaning the touch time is less than 5% of the lead time in the system, then my rule will work. So my rule is, we call it the 15% rule. So we take the touch time to produce that order through the system, and then we divide by 15%, and that gives us the total time that this order should be in the system. And of course, you take that time and divide it by the number of shifts you're producing. It'll tell you how many days for that order to flow through start to finish. So if you're less than 5% and we go to a 15%, we're going to cut lead times by 2/3. And we're also going to reduce the inventory in the system by 2/3, which will significantly improve flow. So we call it getting the cars off the highway. So if you want to improve flow on the highway, get the cars off the highway that shouldn't be on there so that the cars that are on the highway can flow from start to finish in the most effective manner. So I want to share my screen here and show you an example. So if we look at an organization, we have three flows: our information flow, our value added flow, and our cash flow. And if we look at these value added process steps, of course, we have work in process between these steps. And so what we want to do is we want to come up with standard work in process. So standard work in process means the amount of work in process is standard. So if there's standard work in process, the time to produce an order from start to finish becomes highly predictable. But if your system has your inventory going up and down all the time between these steps, then it's not stable. So to achieve stability, we want to have that standard work in process using our 15% rule calculation to determine how much work in process should be there. And depending on your organization, that work in process might come in different forms. So in some cases, it might be pieces. Some cases, it might be assemblies. Some cases, for job shops, it's hours of work. So depending on what type of organization you are, we determine what's the metric of how we're going to measure our standard work in process. And so then the goal is, once we come up with that standard work in process, taking the value added time and dividing that by 0.15, that's sufficient to get us to stability. So what we should see is the lead times come down dramatically. So that's our session for today on understanding how to create reliable lead times. And this is the next step in achieving stability. And then once we achieve a stability, then we're going to see significant improvement in performance. So if you're looking to get performance improvement in your organization, contact us to understand how to apply these techniques in your organization.